Elite Facts presents
10 horrifying serial killers that will give you nightmares.
10.
Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight is well known for being a certified nut job. Her first attempt on someone's life was when she tried to strangle her first husband to death on their wedding night for daring to only have sex with her 3 times before falling asleep. After coming to his senses, her first husband finally left her. In response, Knight took their child and placed her on some train tracks. Luckily, the child was saved by a hobo. Knight eventually met a man named John Price, who was the father of 3 children. They eventually moved in together, even though Price was well aware of her outbursts. Sometime later, Price kicked her out and filed a restraining order against her. He was so worried that he ended up telling his co-workers that if he ever failed to show up for work, she had probably killed him. After letting her back into his life in exchange for sex, Price would eventually pay the ultimate penalty, as Knight stabbed him 37 times. At Price's request, his co-workers called the police due to his absence from work. When the police showed up at his house, they discovered his skinned, headless body lying on the living room floor. Knight had draped his skin completely intact in a single piece over a doorway like some sick curtain. Price's head was found boiling in a pot on the stove, and his buttocks were served on a plate and set on the table for Price's adult children to view. We dare you to try and sleep after hearing this.
9.
Richard Trenton Chase. In California in 1977, Richard Trenton Chase killed 6 people within the space of 1 month. It was said that he drank their blood and consumed some of their body parts, thus giving him the nickname the Vampire of Sacramento. He was eventually sent to a mental hospital after being caught eating raw animals and even blending animals up with Coca-Cola to make milkshakes. As expected, when he was eventually released from the hospital, it didn't take long for him to start killing again. His reasoning for these murders was that he, quote, had to prevent Nazis from turning his blood into powder via poison they had planted beneath his soap dish. In 1980, he committed suicide in his jail cell.
8.
Ted Bundy. Let's be honest, we've all heard of Ted Bundy. It should come as no surprise that he's on this list for his infamous acts of rape and murder to many young women across the United States between 1974 and 1978. He would meet with these women in a public area to gain their trust until he could eventually get them alone and murder them. He was known for staying with the corpses for hours and even days after their murder, as he would play dress-up with them and even have sex with them until they were too decomposed to meet his needs.
7.
The Zodiac Killer. One of the most notorious and still uncovered killers on this list and in modern history. The Zodiac Killer was at large in Northern California during the 1960s and 1970s. His death toll racked up around 7 people. Despite lack of evidence and closing the case for being inactive, it was reopened again in 2007. He was famous for sending letters to the local newspapers claiming they contained the key to the uncovering of his identity. Each letter contained 1/3 of a cryptogram, and although it was deciphered, it gave away nothing about his identity. One of the cryptograms that was sent in 1969 has never been decoded. 1974 was the final year that there was any sign of activity from the Zodiac Killer, and 1967 was the year of his final murder, as far as we know.
6.
John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, is said to have drawn inspiration from Stephen King's popular novel It, as his job was to perform at children's parties in a clown costume. This made things incredibly easy for him, as he could quickly gain the trust of the kids he was performing for before he would murder them. In 1994, he was executed by lethal injection.
5.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer is said to have been responsible for the murders of at least 17 men and boys between the late 1970s and early 1990s. He reportedly engaged in sodomy before the murders and would perform acts of necrophilia, dismemberment, and cannibalism. He was arrested for fondling a 13-year-old boy, but was released when he managed to convince the judge that he was an innocent boy lover in need of some therapy. In 1991, after all the therapy he was provided, he was still killing people, and it got to a point where he was killing 1 person a week. He was finally arrested for attempting to murder Tracy Edwards. Dahmer had planned to dispose of his body by dissolving it in acid and pouring the remains down the toilet, but Edwards escaped and went to the police, who searched Dahmer's house only to discover photos of dismembered bodies, and they even found a head in the fridge. He was found guilty on 15 counts of murder and sentenced to 15 life terms, totaling 937 years in prison. In 1994, he was beaten to death in a prison yard in Wisconsin.
4.
Andrei Chikatilo. From 1978 to 1990, the serial killer nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov, Andrei Chikatilo, killed at least 52 women and children. He was finally convicted in 1992 and executed in 1994. All of his killings had a sexual motif to them, since he could only get off by stabbing or slashing women or children to death.
3.
Charles Edmund Cullen. From 1984 to 2003, Charles Edmund Cullen confessed to murdering 40 mostly elderly patients in New Jersey. He was able to perform these acts due to his job as a nurse at a retirement home. It has been reported that Cullen tried to play God by poisoning his patients to death with non-prescribed medication or failing to administer the correct drugs. Cullen frequently lost jobs in hospitals due to suspicious behavior, but simply moved on and got hired at other facilities, leaving dead patients in his wake. Because of these acts, he was given the nickname the Angel of Death.
2.
Douglas Clark and Carol Bundy. Douglas Clark and Carol Bundy, who are also known as the Sunset Strip Killers, were known as such for murdering prostitutes on LA's Sunset Boulevard. It was said that Clark lured them in and killed them during sex by shooting them in the back of the head. They even saved one of the heads as a sick kind of trophy. After they were caught in 1980, Clark was sentenced to death while Bundy got life for testifying against her boyfriend. Although they were only convicted of 2 murders, they were suspected of many more.
1.
Gary Ridgway. Probably best known as the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway reportedly strangled around 71 women within Washington state between the 1970s and the 1990s. The reason for his nickname is because of the way he disposed of his first 5 victims, simply throwing them into the Green River. He was eventually arrested after DNA evidence linked him to several missing women, and he took a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. As a part of the deal, Ridgway agreed to reveal the location of all of his victims' bodies. Ridgway would pick up prostitutes and runaways, earn their trust by showing them a photo of his son, and then strangle them either with his bare hands or with ligatures. He would often return to the bodies later to have sex with them or arrange them in various poses.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.